Hi everybody, I'm Ann with Kai Dragon Gardening and Cooking Channel, and as I said in another video, I was going to show you a little bit about building your own fairy garden. This is something that I did as a kid back when I was in high school, and that's a long time ago. I mean, we're talking back in the 70s. Polymer clay was my friend. I was very creative and I made all kinds of things with polymer clay. Anything from the little toadstools and mushrooms, little frogs. I mean, if the clay was available, I was creating it, and Mom didn't always like me using her oven, but when they came out with the little easy ovens and stuff, I was golden. I didn't care. I'd go out to the barn. I was creating stuff, and found out later those made pretty decent miniature figurines that I could use in a fairy garden. So the first thing you want to decide when you're going to do a fairy garden is how big of a fairy garden do you want to build? Are you going to have it indoors? Is it going to stay out all year round? Is it something that's just going to be seasonal? Is it something that you want to use indoors and indoors only? Are you making it for a table display and a centerpiece? So you decide that type of thing before you even get started, because when you're doing a fairy garden, scale is very, very important, and you want to make sure that the things that you're using, like your fairies and dragons and frogs and gnomes and whatever little creatures are going to be the main focus besides your flowers and stuff in your fairy gardens for your focal point, you don't want them to get lost by your plants. But you want your plants to be able to continue to grow and still be able to give the fairy garden justice, and plant something that if you need to cut it back, it's not going to distort the look of the fairy garden or the plant. So behind me here I have done one. This is my little bunny fairy garden. I did it at Easter time, and it's focused mainly with fairies and little bunny rabbits and stuff. And some of my plants are low and they're spreaders. I have some tall focal point flowers and others that are going to keep getting taller. Now these are not going to get real tall, and so that's why I chose them. This bowl is one of my pieces that was annihilated with hail damage. I mean, it's got huge holes in it. I was able to fix that by using the sheeting that you put on the ground before you apply mulch. You can use burlap, anything that's going to patch in those holes, and then you can hot glue moss to it or whatever you want to do to cover that up. Or like this is staying outdoors, so I didn't really need to worry about it. I did treat all of my little pieces that I use, my figurines and everything got treated very well with polyurethane and was allowed to dry for a good week before I ever put it in with the plants. So you want to make sure that whatever you're using to coat your stuff, so that way it's weatherproofed and weather resistant if you're going to keep it outdoors, is not going to be something that's going to be harmful to the plant, especially when it gets wet, because when you're watering and stuff, it is going to get wet. You want to also keep in mind, like I said, scale. There's different types of pots that you can use, and you can do fairy gardens in something as small as a teacup. So the designs and the things that you can do are just they're unlimited. So when I want to make houses and stuff that are going to be outside, instead of using like toilet paper rolls like a lot of people use when they're making fairy garden houses or gnome houses and stuff, those are going to deteriorate when they get wet. So I like to take sticks that I have chopped up, and I thoroughly like the hot glue gun, and there's different types of glue that you can get for a hot glue gun that is going to be more weather resistant for being outdoors. But I save like small cans from like the mushroom soups and the tuna cans and things that are smaller, because they're gonna last longer when I'm building those different buildings and things, or bridges, or even the little ponds or whatever I'm going to make. Really tiny baby food jars, if you're going to do a pond scene, those work. PVC pipe is another thing that you can cut down, and you can make your houses by gluing the sticks around them and stuff, and using aluminum cans work good too. You can cut down just anything like that. Make sure that you're being very careful when you're cutting it down, so that way you're not cutting yourself. It's a good idea when you're doing stuff like that to make sure you're wearing good thick gloves when you're handling that kind of stuff, at least for cutting and preparing it. I'm going to show you later on in different videos how to actually make different objects, but if I was to start creating one thing at a time, this video could go on and on and on, and I don't want to do that to you. But I am going to bring out some things that I know that you can use if you want to start getting some ideas in your head now. So fishing line, small twine, string, threads, any of that type of stuff, popsicle sticks, or the little thin craft sticks, any of that stuff makes wonderful fencing. It's great for making bridges, and it's good for making the houses too. And like I said, I use sticks a lot. I did make red, white, and blue, 3 different fairy gardens, and I used a washer to make a tire swing for my fairy using fishing line and washer, and I was able to make a little tire swing and hang it from a tree branch. Stuck it inside the fairy garden, and it looked really cool. Today I'm going to build a fairy garden for this little dragon. He is going to be my centerpiece for this fairy garden. And when I do fairy gardens, I don't like using artificial flowers or anything like that. I always strictly use live plants, and that's how I do mine. And you can do an artificial one, and and then take the thing apart to wash it or whatever you want to do. But the ones that I make are set to be either outdoor, indoor, or both, and I make sure that my plants are not toxic to pets, and just different things that you should think about, before you start building. And so, like I said, scale and size are very important. There's different things you can use, different types of items that you can get. There's little tiny flags that you can buy, and of course it would probably be too big for a pot like this, because unless your figurine was pretty good size, you're going to lose everything in this. You want a taller pot and something that's probably bigger and deeper if you're going to use something like this. Another idea that you can use in some of your bigger ones, or ones that you make out in garden beds. I've done that with garden beds too, where you can make little bridges and put different figurines around the flowers, and it looks really cool. And I just freshly planted a garden bed, and once the flowers start filling in later on, I'll be doing something with that and with some dragon figurines, because naturally Kai Dragon needs a fairy garden bed outdoors. So we'll be filming some of that once it gets looking better through the year. But these little things, and you can just paint them or leave them the way they are, but little words, they're kind of cool. Another thing that's kind of cool to put in there, little dragonflies and butterflies. If you're doing the bigger fairy gardens, I mean, they would be too big for something like this, but they're great for your garden beds and your bigger planters that you're going to do something like that with. So there's no limits with this creativity. So I found these. These used to be little candle holders, and fairy garden went through my mind. And I thought, you know, this would be so cool with just plants and one cool little creature and maybe some little mushrooms and things like that. So I am going to build this for you. Now check out some of your different nurseries and stuff, or, you know, plant flowers from seeds if you want. That's another great way to save money when you're doing fairy gardens, especially if you want to make some to resell later on down the road. Now I chose this because of the purple and stuff in the glass on this little thing that I'm using, and I'll probably end up having to add more dirt to this as I go. But I want this kind of to be my center. Since I'm using the green dragon, I wanted some different foliage. And I keep in mind that this is a coleus, and it's going to get a little bigger. But it shouldn't get so big that it's going to overtake the plant. And sometimes I'll put the plant tags in there if I want to remember what it is that I used. Just so I can put a label or something down at the bottom later on. There's another idea for a fairy garden that you can use these little tiny pots like these, and you can spray paint them in different colors. So because this is on a base that may tip over, and I'm angling this I want it to show but I don't want it to take over the whole fairy garden. I have some samples of some other plants that I was going to use, but I think they're going to be a little too big. So rose moss is great because it blooms in the morning and it kind of hangs over. Can't remember for sure, but I think this is pink. This little guy here is a little root bound. Now, a lot of people like to use succulents in their fairy gardens too, and I have done that with some of the smaller pots because you can use a more shallow base. Now, since this has a clear little thing in here, I'm going to be using blue and clear stones. They're the flat marble pieces. You can use shells, you can use rocks, anything when you're building your trails, even mulch. I've used the little pieces of red mulch before too, which I may do some of that. So I want this to have a little bit of a rustic look here. So I'm going to take a couple pieces of red mulch. And it's going to kind of cover up some of that area. Now if I wanted to make like a lake or something like that, I may use just a whole bunch of these little blue ones to make a lake. Another thing that you can do is take your glue, like with your hot glue, and some plastic canvas, and then form it, and you can make a waterfall. And take your glue and put a little blue dye in there, like food coloring and stuff, and mix it, and then do a swirl and let it dry. And as long as you have it on like a piece of plastic canvas or something, then it would be safe to put in your fairy garden. So now this little guy is going to sit right here. Couple more pieces of the red mulch. Kind of look like he's in a woodland and fenced in area. And I'm thinking he might need a little friend peeking out from underneath this plant. He's got a little blue bird. But this does have the pink and purple thing going on. I'm thinking this little tiny gnome might be a good visitor for him. And let's just let that little gnome sit in there. Let's give it a little more height, a little more plant life here. Kind of like the way that little purple flowers come out. Kind of looks like a little trellis. So we'll probably see if we can pull some of this through here. Yes, I do believe that's going to be kind of cool. And maybe give him some on the other side too. Now you can cut little pieces of tree, but in this case I'm going to use this little tree stump. And there I go. There's my little dragon themed fairy garden. There's so many things, like I said, that you can get to use in fairy gardens. So look up miniatures. You can find them all over online in craft stores. Even some of your garden centers carry some of that stuff now. Just remember that if you're not making some of the things on your own, your fairy gardens can add up to become quite pricey. So a lot of times doing it yourself is going to save you a lot of money. And I'll be doing more videos showing you how to do more things, because fairy gardens are coming back. People are putting them in their gardens, and I'm going to tell you, it is one of the best ways to get your small children interested in gardening at an early age, by doing a fairy garden with them and letting them pick whether they want dragons, gnomes, little tiny animals, just whatever you can find. And then let them go out and look for rocks, fossil rocks, seashells. Like I said, the possibilities are just endless. Go out there, have fun with it. Make yourself a little fairy garden. And I'm going to keep this little guy outdoors here in the garden, and we're going to find a really cool spot for it. Maybe I'll make one of those toadstool benches to put him on. Glad you watched. Appreciate you. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Help us get to those thousands and thousands of subscribers who love gardening. We love doing this. It's time to get enthused and really get back in the swing of things. Have a great day.